Hello and welcome to Scrutiny Panel 1, Tackling the Cost of Living Crisis. Welcome panel members. This is the final meeting of this panel, which is being held in hybrid form with some members online and officers also online. I'd just like to remind everyone that as obviously it's being live streamed on YouTube, please remind people that are online to mute yourself and raise your hand if necessary. Thank you. In terms of item 1, I've got one apology from Councillor Claire Tighe, and in substitution will be Councillor Ben Messon. Is there any other apologies that people are aware of? No. Item 2 is urgent matters. I haven't been aware of any urgent matters I'm aware of. Item 3, is there any declarations of interest that we need to be aware of? No. Item 4, which is matters to be considered in private. There's no matters that need to be considered in private. Item 5 is the minutes from the last meeting, which took place on the 8th of December. Is any alterations, any concerns? No? Okay, great. Item 2 is now what we'll be discussing today, which is the work of the cost of living team. Louise MacDonald has a presentation, followed by Alison Reynolds. Over to you guys. Thank you. Okay, we're just having some technical difficulties. It's the last meeting, so obviously these things will happen. So I'll go on to what we were going to discuss later on in the meeting, which was the councillors from the panel attended Ealing Central Library Community Hub a few weeks ago. And the reason why we went to the community hubs is that during our discussions in meetings, the community hub was discussed a variety of times. So we wanted to have a look and see what they have in offer in terms of the community hub. So the couple of things that we noticed was the opening hours for the community hubs might make it difficult for some working people because it's during library hours, which doesn't tend to have extended hours every day, which might be difficult for working people to access. Also, the information on those who were digitally excluded was recorded, which we found that was very helpful. However, the number of referrals to courses were recorded, but not whether the referral was taken up, which we felt that, you know, going forward, that perhaps that's something that they might want to consider in terms of how much people actually take up the offer. And also what we found as well is that in terms of repeated contacts, currently it hasn't been set up that that the hubs were aware of repeated contacts, which again we found that perhaps going forward that might be helpful in terms of trying to target where there is need for some residents. The service would discussed to us that they use the CRM, which is the Customer Relationship Manager portal, to collect more data, which is something that they're going to be looking at, but they collect it via postcode query and the referral. What the Community Hub had stated currently is that most of the advice currently is depth related. They also said that service users would often build up a rapport. And whilst there are different community hubs in different areas, if there are some residents that would build a rapport with a particular worker and would often travel to a different hub than their local hub. They also said that because the homeless team are now currently, you can only access them via telephone, then a lot of people are coming to the community hub to access support, which is often sometimes very difficult because there's highest, they're in distress a lot of the times, which then they find it very difficult to manage. Equally, obviously, it's a local library. So what we found is that there wasn't a place where you could actually have those private conversations in terms of privacy, that it was, there wasn't currently a designated place where you can have those conversations. So if they found it very difficult. Also, because of the fact that because of what the nature of the residents are coming in terms of having difficulties, they've had to have extra security, which they never did before, because of that. So another thing that we also discussed was Acton Library and the access to Acton Library. So Acton Library is actually upstairs. So they were worried about if it was high profile and whether the footfall was low because of where it was located. I mentioned as well, again, because of the nature of some of the contacts, whether they were getting supervision. I answered whether they have. Currently, they don't have supervision. And however, what they do in terms of mental health and well-being is they rotate. So, for example, in Ealing, which is the busiest hub, what they would tend to do is they rotate monthly so that people wouldn't stay in one particular area for too long, which they found that helpful. Equally, what they also did is, in terms of the hubs, they've had fixed lunch breaks, which is advertised and everyone is aware of. So in terms of residents, they sort of know when to go to, but equally for the staff, it's a time for them to actually have a break, like a lunch break, and just recharge their batteries, which is I felt very good in terms of well-being. Also, what they also mentioned is that from April, there would be an additional permanent staff recruited to the hubs. Again, just equally, sort of acknowledging how popular it has been currently. So that's what our visit. Some members were here, so I just wanting to know if there's anything I've missed out, please let me know whilst we sort out the IT issues. Any members want to discuss the hubs? Councillor Brett?
Yeah, I think you captured it all, and I think it was quite beneficial for us all to kind of go there and see that. And I agree that, some of the issues in particular around privacy of conversations is something that should definitely be looked at going forward.
Councillor Hirsch?
Yeah, I agree. I think there is need for some privacy. And I was also a bit concerned about the security of the staff there, that they feel secure and looked after. You mentioned that they might need some counselling because they encounter quite difficult problems. And if you do that every day, I think a bit of support for the working people there, I think is also something which should be really considered.
Councillor Kumar.
Thanks. I think on the security, we did ask because there was an area at the back of the library. They said they had initially used that area, but for security purposes, it was not appropriate. I mean, it was quite challenging. So they had to move it to the front, which is front of the library. So people walk in, you actually see everybody sitting there. And we saw several people there. And they were being dealt with, but if you went any closer, you could actually hear. So I think the the privacy issue is actually really important. But they also mentioned that where they found it quite challenging was when the homeless people came in, or people who were, maybe drunk, or, were not quite where they were feeling unwell. There were people that would come in who would, which is a question I asked, was, what happens if, do you get people who come in who are really upset, so have got mental health issues? And he said, yes. And, they do break down. And then that's the area, because, you're very conscious, but he said they're so upset that they don't care who's watching them or anything, because they just need to let it out. And then some of them don't actually require any further help, because it's just to let out the steam and, be able to talk to someone. So I think that alone sort of warrants an area, dedicated area. We did see the children's area, which was slightly private, but I don't know how pragmatic that would be. But there is a possibility of perhaps, having that front section to be able to speak to even one person. But I think that they, even under the circumstances, they were managing reasonably well. But I think it is as far as their well-being is concerned, I think it's something that is also very important, as you've mentioned. And they need to have that break time, because if they don't, they may be dealing with a very difficult situation, and that can affect, it would affect us. Just seeing what was happening, or having, so much casework coming in, and different issues that people have. I think for their mental well-being it's very important. So then they're able to deal with things better, which is, quite a reasonable thing for everybody to think. I think that about covers it.
Thank you, Councillor Jessel.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't actually get a chance to visit one of the hubs because I was away, but just hearing the update on this, as a addictions counsellor, I think it's challenging enough being in the room with somebody on a one-to-one, but I think there needs to be a safe space where people can go and be in a room, and I think there should be panic alarms in that room as well, just in case anybody needs assistance. Because a lot of people, they're not used to discussing their personal issues out in public, and it's not private at all when other people are around you. And as they are challenging issues, there'll be lots of emotions coming out and you won't even realize what's going on. And then it's hard to basically contain it, which is really important, because sometimes people can get hurt. Some people are suicidal. Some people have drug and alcohol addictions, like a dual diagnosis, or a triple, quadruple diagnosis, and they don't really know how they're going to act or behave, because when they're in the moment. So I think safety is a very big, important factor to consider. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jessel. And I think based on what the panel has mentioned, I think what we possibly will do is possibly have a recommendation in regards to, I'm sure there's risk assessments anyway. Oh, yes. Sorry, sorry, do you want to do it afterwards, or after your presentation, or would you like to? Yeah. Okay. So we've got Alison Reynolds here, so she's going to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Alison Reynolds, and I'm the Director of Customer and Transactional Services. So I was one of the lead sponsors of the Customer Access Project. So we set up this project a year ago now in April, and Louisa was one of the key leads in this project. So I think initially this was a pilot. We were prototyping, and we weren't really sure after the pandemic who would be coming in to see us, who would need support. And I think a lot of our focus was going to be on helping customers to help themselves and digital support. But I think as you've witnessed and when you've been to visit the hubs, we're seeing a lot of complex issues and people coming to us with a lot of problems. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do is provide that wraparound service. So I think in the old model that we had before the pandemic, it was come in, we'll deal with the council tax inquiry, thank you, and they would go away. But now we want to be able to pick up, if you've got a council tax issue, does that mean you're in debt? Can we help you with housing benefit support? Can we give you financial assistance? Can we refer you to a voluntary organisation who might be able to give you some more wraparound support, identify health issues, etc. So that's the aim of what we're trying to achieve, which I think I agree with you, the environment isn't right now for the customer group that we're getting in. It's great for digital support, although I do agree we need more privacy with people on the screens. So based on your feedback from customers, we're temporarily we'll be making some changes to the location that the customer service advisors are working in to give more privacy. We've put up some frosted glass already. We're moving the locations of the customer service points. We have a private room that we're hoping we may be able to use for a short while, but I think what we really need to do is we either need to look at doing some major physical changes to the library space to make it a suitable environment or look for an alternative location. So we're also, over the next couple of months, let's just not develop any further. Let's review everything. Let's speak to our customers. And then in a couple of months, we're going to start the next phase of the project. So now, how do we want to expand it? We have always had a commitment to 7 town centres, which is in the manifesto. So would we just set up another 3 locations, or did we want to maybe take our advisors out and work from a food bank one day a week or from a children's centre? So it's not going to be a one size fits all. We need to look at what is the need in each of the areas, because we know in certain areas we might get more inquiries about housing and homelessness, and others it might be more about financial support, etc. So we're reviewing all of this, and we'll be looking at the next stage, and that will also be looking at where are we going to deliver our services from. So I think that's what we're looking to achieve. Just a couple of points on the homelessness issue and people turning up who've had issues getting home through to the homeless team. We're working with that service to improve the telephone system, and we're going to have a technical solution that will allow them to better manage the calls and monitor the demand and then get the right staff available to take those calls. So that's an ongoing project, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to go live with that in the next 4 to 6 weeks, which will help the situation. We've recruited an additional security guard. There will be another one over the summer period because we've got the exam period as well. So that will help with that situation, but that will be continuously monitored. But I think really we need to change the physical location, as in complete sort of design of the area, or move to another location to address those issues. And yes, we are recruiting. We've got some funding now for the project. This project wasn't funded, so we were doing it within budget and using mainly library budget for this project, but we got growth for this financial year. So we're able to do some permanent recruitment, recruit some additional staff, which will include a senior who will be able to do more of the supervision work and support for the staff, and to have that detailed knowledge of those services and support. And what I would say is Imran Iqbal, who's our manager of the hubs, he's fairly new in that role, but he worked in a contact centre before. So he's got an excellent breadth of knowledge on council tax, benefits, all those inquiries, financial support. So he's been a really great addition to the team, and I'm hoping moving forward that he'll continue to be with us. So I think those are probably the main points I want to feedback on, but I've taken all of your comments and they will all feed into the new model. And I think we'll probably be coming back to you as well for any feedback on the next stage of the design.
Thank you. I think we may still do a recommendation in terms of the environment. And it's really good about the funding. But again, and I think we possibly need to make a recommendation so it's clear in terms of the staff members, because of the nature of the issues that they may come, because we actually don't know what they're going to come across. So mental health training, so they have a bit of an understanding of that, mental health, you know, mental health first aid training, things like that, I think might be helpful. And to Councillor Jassel's point, if there is a suggestion that they may be in another room, because at the moment it's public, so people can see if there's. Councillor Jassel might be right in terms of panic alarm. How would they raise alarm if they're in the back room? How would they, so things like that. I know you're probably going to do a risk assessment, but we might just put a recommendation in there about that as well. Anything else? Councillor Jassel and then Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Chair. Just to mention that although a qualified counsellor is in a room on a one-to-one with somebody, but if these persons are not qualified therapists or proper advisors, then they're going to be in with the unknown, and they definitely will not see those challenging behaviours coming on board, and they won't be able to handle them or contain it. So if you are, it's just a recommendation, I think it would be best to have 2 people in the room instead of 1 person, and then maybe a panic alarm. If things get out of hand, you can just press the buzzer and then other people will come in, like security and stuff, and maybe handle the situation in a better manner. Thank you.
Councillor Jassel, Councillor Kumar.
Hi, Alison, when you mentioned the location or the room, you're talking about the library still, or you're looking at alternative? Because the library we did look at the room upstairs. They weren't talking about Healing Library, but I'm not sure if it's got disabled access, because you do have a few stairs. I'm not sure if there's a lift that would take them. So that could be, I just thought I'd mention that as far as the room is concerned. Because a library rarely, for this sort of thing, you've got to keep your voice low. It's all that as well. The minute you walk in, you can't really be. So if there is someone that comes in who's upset, or maybe a drug, alcohol related situation, then they're not going to realize that they're in a library. So I think just sort of to reiterate what I've said earlier, because the room, yes, fine, but I know that we have a lot of personal safety guidance as well. So I'm sure that that's being looked at. But I did feel that there was an issue when we were talking to Imran. But I think under the circumstances, he was dealing with things as best as possible. So really, if you are looking at locations, would it still be the libraries or the current ones, or will you be looking at others?
So I think when we review, we'll be looking at all of the locations. So I take on board the point about Acton Library, the Dominion Centre. We also use the library there, and that again isn't ideal, and it's 2 desks in the middle of a library. So I think we've got a lot of buildings as a council. So this project was set up quite quickly, and it's let's respond to, we know people need to come in and see us. They haven't been able to see us for quite a long time. So let's just set something up with what we've got. And it was a project with libraries, and I think it's worked really well. But I agree with you that the locations need reviewing, and I can't say yes or no whether we're going to be using the libraries, but if we carried on using the libraries, they need to change. The layouts need to change, and they need to be fit for purpose, and I agree they're not fit for purpose at the moment. I know there is access in Ealing Library to the upper floor because there is a lift, so we'll be looking at everything. So I think any minor changes will be temporary, And I think over the next 3 or 4 months, we will definitely know what the plan is for the future and the more permanent plans. So, and I think Louisa just reminded me that all staff have had training in mental health and dealing with people with mental health, but that's not to say that doesn't need to be refreshed, because that was nearer to the beginning of the project. They've had a lot of training. But that always needs to be refreshed, and a lot of that based on the experiences that they're having now, really, and the people that are coming in, because a lot of people have got a lot of challenges. So I think all of this feedback is really useful. Thank you.
Chair, there was just a follow-up thing. What I did think was really good, and I asked that question, was the check-in, check-out.
We just have to move on.
Okay.
Councillor Coomer, we'll discuss it during the recommendations.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So Guy, so Louisa and Alison are going to be starting your presentation. Louisa, thank you.
Thank you so much, and apologies for the earlier technical difficulties. Thanks for rearranging the agenda. Just wanted to run through a few slides with you. So I think since you last all met, there's been a new cost of living team recruited and established for the council. So I'm leading up that team along with 2 other officers who are working with me on a part-time basis alongside their substantive role. And we started really in January. So I think your last meeting was prior to that. So, you know, obviously just an indication that the council recognised that we needed a bit more of a coordinated approach to all of this activity, because there was a lot of stuff going on across all the variety of different directorates and services. And so it's been my role to sort of pull that together over the last 3 months. Initially, that was due to finish at the end of March this year. It was only supposed to be a 3-month secondment, but we've just had confirmation that it's going to continue for another 12 months, which is great because we've still got a lot of work to do. And unfortunately, this is a crisis that isn't going to go away in 3 months. So it's great that we're sort of established now. We've got a lot of the building blocks in place, and I'm going to take you through those this evening. So just a few key updates. Some of this stuff you'll be aware of already. So a lot of the things that we're looking at is around the allocation of the Household Support Fund. So in case you're not aware, Ealing's been allocated 5.3 million by the DWP for the next 12 months. There's a report actually going to Cabinet tomorrow evening around how we propose to provide that support directly to residents in the borough. So after that meeting tomorrow, there'll be a slightly more formal update. In terms of council tax support, we've had an extra 630,000 to spend, which is translated into £40 for every household for people who don't currently receive 100% council tax reduction. You may have also heard the GLA announcement in relation to free school meals. So as of September, all primary school children will be receiving universal free school meals. And that's a programme that's going to be funded for the next 12 months. So we're looking at that scheme at the moment, because while that is obviously brings some fantastic benefits to families and specifically directly to the children, it also poses a bit of a risk because we want to encourage people to continue applying for those meals who are eligible, because it's a passport benefit to other benefits as well. So we're, as a team, looking at how we can address that at the moment. Energy bills obviously has been a huge topic over the winter months. You'll know that in the recent budget, we have the energy price guarantee was extended, but also we've got the energy bill relief scheme that Alison's area is administering, which is about those who didn't previously benefit from the government support that was available. So just as an overview, I won't go through all of these, but this is just to provide some high level information about the government cost of living payments that will be provided to specific groups over the next year. We've got all of this information is on our website. One of the key things that we've been doing is developing all of that information. So it's accessible from the Ealing Council homepage. And you'll be able to go on and find out more information about that. We just touched on the Household Support Fund. As I said, this is going to Cabinet tomorrow. And it's proposed that we're going to support a series of groups. So as we have been doing over the last couple of years, we've been supporting families who are eligible for free school meals based on their income. We've also been supporting low-income families with children under the age of 5, and we'll continue to do that alongside our care leavers across the borough, who are obviously struggling with the rise in cost of living as well. A new group that we're hoping to support going through the next 12 months is residents who receive either housing benefit or council tax reduction, but they haven't been receiving the DWP benefits. So they will be missing out on those cost of living payments on the previous slide from the government. So we acknowledge that they might need a bit of extra support. And also people who are receiving care at home, but are on a low income, or they have got a high care bill to deal with. So they're the main groups that Cabinet will be looking at tomorrow evening. And then we will also be looking at whatever's left over of the fund, putting that money in to top up our local welfare assistance fund, so that anyone who doesn't fall into those specific groups can apply for financial support via the existing local welfare assistance route. So, as I said, one of the things that we've been doing in the last 3 months is really looking at the data, all the data that we've got in the council. We've built a data dashboard. What we've seen, just some recent trends, we've seen an increase in free school meals across the borough. Food bank colleagues have reported that there's been an increase in people visiting them. And as we've just talked about now about the community hubs, we're obviously seeing rises in the number of people there as well. And as Alison said, you know, a lot of that, the reasons why people are coming in is cost of living related, and looking for financial support or other support. So we've been providing information and advice on debt and financial advice. And we've seen sort of a significant increase in traffic to our website around benefits and support for people to pay their bills. And feedback from the voluntary sector indicates that they're seeing a huge increase in demand within communities themselves for food, and particularly over the winter months for warm clothing and financial assistance. This is just a snapshot of the data dashboard. I appreciate that it's quite difficult to see there on the big screen. And because of when this report was submitted, there's updated data available now. So I'm quite happy to share the link to this live dashboard, and you can go in and interrogate the figures and look in detail at your own time. But this is basically just indicating the increase in demand for free school meals across the borough. So you can see there's quite a clear rise in demand there. And this is, again, free school meals by term. So the last figures here is almost 15,000 people in the autumn term were receiving free school meals in Ealing. This next slide looks at food bank usage. So in the period between April and January, there were 13,000 food vouchers given out via Ealing Food Bank. That's just the main food bank in Ealing. There's lots of other food hubs and food supply spaces that aren't included in this figure. So this is almost a tip of the iceberg figure, if you like. And then finally, the local welfare assistance applications. So we received almost 3,000 applications between April and December 21. And then that has actually reduced to 1,800 rather in the same period in 2022. So I mentioned that I've been leading this programme. These are all the work streams that are included in that programme. So this is how we've organised the information that we presented on the website. And each area on this slide has got separate information available on Ealing Council's website. So as I said, you can go into there and have a look at all of the detailed information that we've included. But just some headlines between while the team's been in operation between January and March. We've just recently issued a further 16,000 vouchers to families ahead of the Easter break for under the Household Support Fund. We just talked about the community hub staff, and they've undertaken training with Turn to Us so that they can better support people who come in and help them to complete benefits maximisation applications and use the online calculators that are available to them. And we're currently in the process of a pension credit uptake campaign where we've been proactively contacting everyone in the borough who we think it should be eligible for pension credit but isn't actually claiming that. We're doing some work with the climate action team in the council who have recently recruited a food partnership development officer, and they're taking forward a food partnership development programme. There's a specific focus on food provision in Southall, and we were successful in attaining some funding from the GLA to support that work, which is really important. Obviously, over the winter months, the focus has been on energy and warm spaces. So we've been doing a lot of work around that. The council's warm space programme officially sort of ended on the 31st of March. We're currently collating feedback from the 25 service providers that we provided funding to just before the Christmas period. The deadline to get that back to us is actually this week, so we don't have that to share yet, but we're hoping that that will inform any decisions we make as we roll on to next autumn winter. We've set up an additional work stream looking at people with disabilities, and we've actually made that a priority within our contact centre. We've been using data that we hold in the council, so people who we know who are on low incomes, but also receive a disability benefit. We've been proactively calling them and contacting them from the council's contact centre just to check in on them, to see how they are, to see if they're aware of the support that's available to them, and to see if there's anything that we can do to further support them or signpost them to other organisations that might be able to help and support them. So that's something that's an ongoing programme of work. We're going to continue to identify vulnerable groups with the data that we've got available to us, and we're going to continue making those calls. And initial feedback from people who we've spoken to, they've been genuinely grateful to receive a contact from us and have taken value from the call. And we're analysing the first phase of that work at the moment. But we've seen a number of referrals onto other services, a number of residents who've been supported in making applications where I think they wouldn't have necessarily done that had we not have made that contact. So I think it's a really valuable piece of work. In terms of health and wellbeing, we're really linking up with areas across all of the council and their sort of service areas, so including community champions, social prescribers within public health, and also children's centres. So we're making sure that they're also aware of all of the information that we've got available and can effectively advise people how they can access the support that's available. Leisure and enrichment has been one of the nicer areas that we've been able to focus on. So just recognising that, often when people are facing financial struggles, the first thing to perhaps be crossed off the list of things to do is the nice family trip to the cinema or to the swimming pool. So we've been trying to work with local businesses and partners to promote local offers for affordable family activities, as well as working with our library service to put up a whole programme of activities locally, focusing on our most deprived areas. So, for example, we've got family film mornings starting in Northolt Library on a Saturday morning, which will be free for local people to attend. So it's just, trying to look at every area that affects people's lives. And this is my final slide. So digital exclusion is something that I've been involved in for quite a long time in the council, and we've brought that into the cost of living programme because we're recognising that particularly in the pandemic, it was very evident that as we try and communicate with people, that more and more people we realise were digitally excluded. So we're working closely with the community hubs, and we've got a various number of schemes to bridge that gap with devices and access to data, and also increasing residents' skills in that area. And then finally, something that underpins the whole programme is around data, as we've already seen, and communications and information advice. So lots of the work that I've been focusing on and will continue to focus on as we move through is making sure all of the information is up to date. We've produced a leaflet around all of the support that's available, which we will soon be updating with all the new household support fund allocations. So that will be activity happening in the next couple of weeks. And we're hoping to do some more community engagement activity, for example, hosting a cost of living event locally in the borough, and also producing video, so that we're trying to target people who might not be online and think of all of the innovative ways we could get those messages across to them. And that's the end of my presentation. So a very quick whistle-stop tour of all of the activity, but happy to take any questions anyone might have.
Any questions? Councillor, so I'm really conscious of time. So Councillor Wesson, Councillor Jassel, Councillor Hirsch, but just mindful there's people online. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chair, and thanks very much for that presentation. It was brilliant. One of the things that occurred to me as you were talking on the comms and engagement kind of strand of the presentation is I was previously involved in some work in setting up a local poverty watch group when I was based in the Midlands, and it just triggered me to think of a project that we sort of initiated, which was to pull together a kind of directory of services for those experiencing poverty locally. And it was something that was quite simple, but actually sort of covered off a whole range of different services that people could access, including kind of emergency food, domestic abuse services. I just wondered how far your kind of cost of living leaflet goes to addressing some of those wider issues.
Yeah, thanks. The leaflet is quite small. I've got a copy here. It's not addressing those issues at all. But what we do have is a community support directory online. So this was something that was born out of our Ealing Together response through the COVID pandemic. We set up a community support directory, which is an online directory, which we have listed a lot of the different types of support that you've mentioned available. So food provision, all of our warm spaces were listed on there, for example, local organisations that offer debt advice, money advice, financial advice, all of those sorts of things are on there. It can be found on the Do Something Good website, and we signpost to it from our cost of living pages online. I think it's a really good point that is, it's an online directory, and I'm always aware that digital exclusion is in my scope as well. As part of the Community Hub project as well, something that I developed at the beginning of that project is a service delivery guide, which is a huge document which also documents a lot of these support services available. We've made that available obviously to all of the Community Hub staff, but we've also shared that with the voluntary sector and in Ealing as well, because it's a really valuable resource. It's a live document that people keep adding to. So it's not a public document, but it is there for people to effectively signpost people on.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I might ask for a link to it because I didn't know of its existence actually.
Councillor Jessel.
Thank you, Chair. My question is basically, firstly, very good presentation. But in your presentation, you did mention that some of the residents have missed out on the DWP cost of living payments. So I just wanted to basically ask, is there a reason as to why they've missed out on the DWP cost of living payments?
I think like us, and Alison, you might be better to answer this, but like the local authority, they have had a set amount of money to allocate to individuals. The government have decided who they should be allocated to. But I guess that doesn't always hit everyone. So we've tried to identify those people who will have fallen through those gaps and so that we can offer them with additional support. But Alison, you might have a more technical answer.
So the government allocated money to people who were on universal credit, but quite a large proportion claim housing benefits. So they may have missed out in that way. So I think it's just that a lot of the data isn't always joined up. So I think the government then did recognise that there were some gaps. So further funding and grants that we've received, they've then said, with this funding, you now need to address, and they've given us guidance on how we spend some of that money. So we do have a bit of choice, but so I think we're almost at a point now where most of the gaps have been plugged, but some people, I would say, have missed out. So, but initially all of those payments went to people on universal credit.
Very quick questions. And some of your schemes have come to an end, like the one on climate, energy efficiency, and the digital one. It would be really nice on these to know and understand how many have actually taken this up. Was that as much as we expected to? Was it below? Was it above? So have we had enough take up of these kind of offerings we've made? I mean, I'm thinking especially about the energy efficiency because it feels a bit like winter hasn't stopped yet. And the next one is coming. So have we had enough interest in these?
So the Healthy Homes Ealing scheme is a continuous scheme. It runs throughout the year. I can get some stats if you'd like me to on the uptake on that. It's run by our climate action team in the council, but I am linked in with them, so I can definitely get some stats on that. The digital inclusion schemes, so we've got a number of schemes running through digital, all of which are ongoing, and they will continue. But I can certainly get you some figures to show uptake. As I said, we're just right now collecting the warm spaces evaluation and feedback. So I'm more than happy to share that as well once it's available.
Thank you. We're going to wrap up on this item. I just want you to say, Louise and Alison, and obviously I can't say thank you to your entire teams, but hearing what is happening in terms of the council is very heartwarming to hear, especially from where we started off, to hearing all the things, especially the leisure and enrichment, the film family week and things like that. It will help the most vulnerable residents. So thank you so much for all you do, and I'm sure that the panel will also echo what I've said, but we really do need to go to the next item, I'm afraid. Okay, so item 7 is now the money management debt advice, and online we should have Steve Allen.
Evening, Chair and councillors. Thank you for your time. I've got just a short presentation that I'm going to load up, just covering off exactly what we do. Hopefully that has all come up on your screens. Yep, can you see that?
Yes, we can see that.
Good. Right, I'll be quick because I know time's of the essence for you guys. Right, let's see if I can actually move the slide on. Now this worked in rehearsals. I'm going to stop that slide share. Right, I'll have to talk you through. So, Credit Union is where I'm based. So it's the London Community Bank. We're a small credit union covering about 3,500 members across a number of boroughs in West London. We're non-profit making. We have to fund our own activities, and we have a staff full-time equivalent of 3, so we're fairly small in size. All deposits and everything are covered by the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prudential Regulation Authority, and all savers are guaranteed up to an £85,000 maximum savings limit. So in the event that there was ever an issue, then people's savings are protected. How can we help? Well, we have 3 basic services. Anyone who joins, there's no joining fees or credit checks or anything like that for having a savings account. We're just subject to the normal identification and verification of members. We offer a prepaid Visa card, and this, to many extents, is our current account substitute. The benefit of a prepaid card is that there are no credit checks required for a person applying for a card. So at the moment, if you have a very poor credit history, banks are not really forthcoming in providing accounts at the moment. So, and especially in London, if you want to move about by public transport and things like that, you need a contactless card. So we find quite a lot of members taking this card up because they've been excluded from the main banking networks. The third area, which takes up most of our time, is the affordable loans area. 80% of our loans are to unemployed single parent families. They still have to pass credit checks in terms of ability and willingness to repay, and we can lend up to £500 against people's child benefit. The idea behind this scheme is to stop people going to payday lenders, credit card funding, loan sharks and things like that. Increasingly, we're working as a gateway to other organisations such as Step Change, Turn to Us, etc. We also provide a monthly newsletter with tips and things for members in terms of how to save money and how to, asking people to look at the benefits they're claiming just to make sure they're claiming the right benefit. In terms of loans, we offer loans to anyone in the community, in truth, and we have payroll deduction schemes operating for a number of employers, including Ealing Council. And in fact, we've just signed up the Greener Ealing team onto the payroll deduction scheme, and this is for people to save as well as to borrow. The average interest rate for these loans is 1% per month, APR's 12.7. We are mainly an online operation now. We can still provide paper-based loans and leaflets to people, but the majority of people now apply for our services online. All our services work with mobile phones, PCs, tablets and things like that. So we're fairly accessible in that respect. In terms of the cost of living issues that we've seen, we're seeing much higher levels of distress across our member base. Key areas tend to be food and energy. and to a lesser extent rent. On the energy side, we're seeing, unfortunately, quite a few members who have taken the view that because they have children and they're not on a prepaid meter, they can't be cut off. So they've decided just not to pay their energy bills at all. So we have some members with £5,000–6,000 of arrears. This is something that I'm not sure how this will resolve. It may be that they will have to go into an insolvency process at some point. But for the energy companies, I think there's probably little they can do at the moment, but this is an issue that's coming down the line. We're seeing much higher loan volumes with an increase of these loans for day-to-day needs as opposed to holidays and home improvements and things like that. We're still seeing members with issues when they're moved from tax credits to universal credit. There's often a delay in getting the universal credit through. It causes them to go into arrears with their rent. They are able to get loans from universal credit, but there's a limit as to how much they can get on that. So, and the loans have to be paid back fairly quickly as well. So that is causing an issue. We're giving a much higher referral rate to support agencies such as Step Change, who, from our experience, offer by far the best advice of any of the debt agencies that are available. We're seeing a lot more in terms of debt management plans. Unfortunately, some of these are the commercial ones where quite high fees are involved. Whereas if people use Step Change, there are no fees for debt management plans. We're trying to support our members if they're going down this route to actually make the right decisions. Biggest concern for members, as I said earlier, it remains around food and food price inflation. Basic ranges of food in the shops has increased probably at the highest rate. And so for a lot of our members, that's where they're seeing the biggest distress. I would give a quick shout out to the cost of living website that Louise has been involved in. That's proved very, very useful as a referral tool to our members who live in Ealing. And that has got a lot of information on it that gives all the pointers that people need. A couple of areas for thought that I would throw out to the committee. We work with Brent Council at the moment on a specific scheme where we operate an interest-free loan for Brent residents, where the council have introduced the resident. This is for residents that say maybe have rent arrears or high cost debt that's maybe built up over during the COVID times, but where we believe that the member has the ability to meet the loan repayments. Often the interest rates that people are paying now are very, very substantial, and just across the council, I'm not sure if anyone there is with say Lloyds Bank or the Halifax Bank, but for an agreed overdraft facility, and this is agreed, not unagreed, the interest rate is now 49.9%. And you know, if it's a non-agreed or some of the smaller loan companies, interest rates of 100% are quite common. So this loan scheme has actually managed to save people quite a lot of money, and part of it's the justification of the support from Brent has been to try and ensure people can retain their rented accommodation. The second scheme that we've operated on is with Hillingdon Council on the provision of green loans, and this is to support residents with funding insulation, boiler upgrades, solar panels and things like that. On that particular scheme, we took the capital risk on that, and the council funded the interest cost. So it was a way of the council trying to hit its internal targets, I think, in terms of uptake of home improvements across the borough, with a bit of a carrot for residents. Now, what I would say is that we're more than happy to look at similar schemes for Ealing. That if there are ideas or thoughts from any of the departments, then we're happy to sit down and go through those and just see what can be done. We certainly have a reasonable amount of funding in terms of money that we can lend to residents of Ealing. It's just coming up with the suitable schemes and delivery channels that work within the borough. And that's sort of the end of the presentation, really. Not sure if there's any questions or.
We're going to go on to the next presentation and take questions after everyone has spoken.
Yeah, okay.
Steve. Thank you.
Oh.
So the next two people that we're going to be speaking is Maria Van Omen and Nikki Crown from Crosslight Advice.
Hello, good evening. Just going to share my screen with you. So I'm the branch manager for Crosslight in Ealing, and Nick is deputy branch manager. I'll tell a little bit about Crosslight, what we do in general, and what we're doing in Ealing, and then Nick will take over and tell a little bit more about our clients and the issues we face. So Crosslight is a free debt advice charity, and we're regulated by the FCA to give debt advice, and we also offer benefit advice. At the moment, we've got 10 branches, most of them in different boroughs in London, but we also have a couple of branches in Kent, and we've got one in Swindon. And our aim is to help people who are out of poverty and to help them build a better future. And we're doing that by offering open-ended, holistic support. And we're really just tailoring the support to everyone's needs. So it could be that one appointment is enough and a bit of advice is enough for people to manage things themselves, or it could be that they need really long-term support, which we can offer as well. So we've got 3 ways to do this. First of all, we give advice, so we give debt and benefit advice. We also equip people, so we've got money education. We offer a money course, which people can follow online, or we've done 2 money courses in Hanwell, face-to-face, and we're looking at expanding at different places in Ealing to offer a face-to-face money course. We also have one-on-one budgeting coaching available with one of our budget coaches. If people, after doing the money course, need some more help to manage their finances, we can help them with that. We also love to encourage people, so we're not just helping people with the problem they're presenting, but we're also looking at the whole picture, looking at what other things people might need, and help them where possible, and refer and signpost to other organizations where needed. A little bit more about Crosslight in Ealing. So we're funded by the food bank in Ealing. At the moment, the demand at the food bank is very high, so it means we can only help people who are using the food bank. The food bank asked us for help at the end of 2020, and we started in 2021. To start with, it was me as a part-time staff member, and there were 2 volunteers, and we've now grown to 4 part-time staff members and about 9 volunteers. And we started off in Hanwell at the food bank there, and we're now at different places in the borough. So at 4 places, we've got a drop-in when the food bank is open, and we also hold appointments. I think the drop-ins are a really nice way for people to just easily reach out for help, and for us to reach out to people who need the help. We do also, so we're currently at Greenford, Northolt, Hanwell, Southwell, and Acton. We also have a food bank office in West Ealing where we offer face-to-face appointments. So for people, there is always a place close to you to reach out and get help. I wanted to give you a bit of an idea of what we've done last year. So in 2022, we supported 235 people, and about half of them no longer needed to use the food bank afterwards. And the financial gain for those people was at least 350,000. And 85% of the people who have rent arrears are no longer at risk of eviction due to our help. So it gives you a little bit of an idea. I'll just hand over to Nikki to tell a little bit more about our clients and the issues they face.
Good evening, everybody. We thought it just would be useful to give you a sense of who our clients are. And of course, there's no typical client. Our clients are as diverse as our borough is, but we do see some common struggles, particularly amongst the elderly, people with long-term health conditions that can be physical and mental health. We help a lot of single men struggling with addiction, often who've been street homeless. And of course, we help people with disabilities, single mothers, refugees, asylum seekers, and many of our clients are workers. Along with these groups, our clients often have problems which make managing their affairs particularly difficult. Digital poverty, I know we've talked about that earlier this evening. It's not just the lack of hardware, computers and smartphones, but also it's the skill to use them. There's also a lack of literacy, and that can be English as a foreign language. Language barriers create problems for our clients' ability to navigate websites, telephone systems, and to make online applications, accessing my account on Ealing Council's website, for instance. And the other thing we see very often is a lack of financial literacy. People are unfamiliar with budgeting skills, even understanding bills and their benefit letters. So that's where our money course and budget coaching comes in. So in relation to the cost of living crisis, how has that impacted our clients? Basically, we see more people who are unable to pay their bills. With increases in rent, council tax, energy costs, it's led to more rent arrears. And with the COVID restrictions being lifted, we're seeing more people being evicted. The knock-on effect of the interest rate increases mean more private landlords are giving Section 21 notices to evict their tenants. And more council tax arrears. People are presenting with many years, different years of council tax debt. And we're seeing more and more higher energy and water debt. So people with multiple debts, gone are the days where we used to have a person arrive with just one debt problem. And I would say we're seeing more and more people with multiple priority debt problems. And those are those debts that, if left unpaid, have very serious consequences. So the knock-on effect of all of this is that more people are being evicted, more people are having prepayment meters installed, and people are having bailiffs attending their home. And this leads to incredible stress, anxiety, and suicidal clients. So we just thought it would be useful to finish with 3 very specific issues that we observe in Ealing. And we very much believe we can work with the council on these things to create good outcomes for both clients and for Ealing Council. The first one is council tax. We very much welcome the council's increase in the amount of council tax reduction support benefit that's available now to residents. But many of our clients have council tax debt that is exacerbated by the method used by the council to enforce payment, that is using bailiffs, and then the bailiffs adding their own fees, which can double the debt. This causes further financial hardship, considerable stress, and it's very difficult for us to help negotiate a truly affordable payment arrangement for people who are already struggling to meet their everyday costs. We believe that the council, if the council was more prepared to have less rigid systems, there may be less bad debt for the council and maybe more revenue. And we know other local authorities are no longer using bailiffs, and one assumes they've done some analysis of their income, their revenue streams. Another observation is about temporary accommodation. This is the accommodation used to house people the council has a duty to house, so they're probably by definition the most vulnerable people in our community. And we see these people who are housed in very expensive accommodation with very complex benefit and debt problems, often born out of poor understanding and communications of the circumstances they are in. These people often have feet in both benefit systems, both the legacy benefits, they get housing benefit, but they're also having to deal with universal credit. They often have been housed at a time of crisis and do not have a grasp of their financial liabilities. So we see really complex problems with energy and council tax and rent. The final thing we've seen a lot of recently is HMOs. We've seen increasing numbers of people who are housed in HMOs, which are often poorly converted properties with numerous individual dwellings with shared facilities. And these are sometimes originally a 3-bedroomed house, which are now 6 individual dwellings, each with council tax band A for each room, and utilities where the properties haven't been properly wired, which leads to disputes about energy and unpaid energy bills. So there's often accruing debt. So these are just a few examples of some of the specific problems we see in Ealing, and we very much welcome if any of you wanted to come and see us doing our work in the food banks of Ealing, you'd be very welcome to come and join us as a drop-in and see how we operate.
Thank you for that. The last presentation is from Bajit Badisha from Nucleus Legal Advice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Bajit Badisha, as just mentioned. I work at Nucleus. I'm the director at Nucleus Legal Advice Centre. We've been providing advice in Ealing for around about 14 years now, and we provide debt, housing, benefit and employment advice up to representation level. For the last 5 years, we've been a member of Ealing Advice Consortium, which is a group of 12 or so local charities who come together as Ealing Advice and try and help local residents. And that's led by Ealing Mencap, and we're one of the key members. Just looking back at Ealing, when I first started working in Ealing 14 years ago, I did see it as an advice desert, I must say, and a large part of that is because the provision of advice was lacking, as far as I can see. We provide the telephone triage line for Ealing Advice, and we provide the specialist advice for benefits, appeals and debt cases and so on. But one thing I would say in comparison to other boroughs, the capacity to carry out casework is more limited, basically down to resources. So one of the first things that we tried to do, and I know all the other charities are trying to do this as well, is to increase capacity by bringing in additional income from other sources, usually trusts and so on. So it's great that we work closely with Crosslights as well in the food bank. So it's great to see colleagues Nikki Crown and Maria Letta doing all this really good work. So coming back to our debt advice service is funded through MAP, the Money Advice Pension Service, and Toynbee Hall, and we work at it's a pan-London service, and we're the local provider in Ealing. And what it allows us to do is provide a holistic debt service where we do specialist casework, and it's regulated by FCA. It's very similar to Crosslights as well. So just looking at debt in Ealing, the first thing I would say about Ealing, I did say that there's a lack of provision. I too strongly think that there needs to be more casework, and we can resolve a lot more questions, a lot more issues a lot earlier. Ealing has got a high need compared to other boroughs. Even before the pandemic and back in 2017, Ealing had higher rates for higher spending within households on bills than average for London. It had a higher spend for residents on fuel as well, which is coming back to the badly converted housing and just the housing stock generally, and also echoing what Nikki mentioned a minute ago about council debt bailiffs. Ealing is the 4th highest user of bailiffs to enforce council tax debt in London. And I again would echo what colleagues have said, is that's really putting money in the pockets of bailiffs companies, rather than into residents' pockets and getting money back from council tax payers. I personally don't think that's very effective. It's chasing very small amounts of money and doubling the debt quite often and causing a lot of stress and inconvenience to residents. Coming back to before, this was all before COVID, and COVID obviously exacerbated this. It was mentioned earlier about Steve, the fact that people are carrying large rent arrears because of that. People didn't work because of that. They're carrying huge amounts of debts because of COVID, and this was further exacerbated by cost of living. And I was trying to make comparisons between sort of people we were seeing, the cases we were seeing over that period of time, and there's just been so much change. It's really hard to compare year on year. That's the first thing I noticed. So all I did was compare last year and the first month of this year, because I think we've had a substantial change as recently as that as well. Cases we saw in January, before COVID, in December, the main issue was really council tax was the highest, followed by rent, then followed by other issues such as credit cards and fuel and food and all those kind of things, household goods. In January, the highest demand we had was for fuel. That's the presenting issue was fuel straight away, and that's no surprise. And that was followed by rent and then following council tax. And the levels of arrears that we're seeing coming forward, one, the volumes have gone up, the number of people coming forward for it. But secondly, the amount of debt that they're coming forward with is increased substantially as well. Fuel is times 4, easily to a fourfold increase. And rent, people come with rent arrears, rather than coming when they've got 500, 600 pounds worth of rent arrears, they've got thousands. We're talking sometimes 5,000 plus rent arrears. And this is the private sector, which I'm always amazed at the carrying. And again, as colleagues have said, council tax, we're seeing people with a number of years of council tax. And we're seeing those this month again, because the new council tax month is upon us. Looking back at the individual, we are seeing more and more people who are employed, who are new to the sector, who are coming to us for advice because they are desperately looking around for solutions. And we're seeing people coming forward for one-off advice. They don't want you to look at all the other issues, because we try and take a holistic approach. We sit down, debt counselling is where you look at the whole picture as a whole, look at the income, look at the expenditure, maximize the income, try and reduce expenditure, and then spread any excess over the various creditors. People don't want us to do that anymore, because they're looking for a sticking plaster approach. All they want us to solve the problem that's in front of them, presenting problem, that's it. And once you've done that, they're off. And they might come back out soon afterwards. That's what they're actually presenting with, which is a bit worrying, because it's not looking at medium or longer term solutions. We were lucky enough to run the fuel project in the last couple of months. I will be quick, and I know we're over time. And again, that is showing the most vulnerable people are missing out on the government support. And one of the reasons, I think it was mentioned earlier, it was because it was badly designed. That's what I would say. Most of the people on prepayment meters had to rely on vouchers. Everybody who was paying by direct debit had it paid directly into their accounts, which is ridiculous. So the people who missed out were the most vulnerable. The vouchers expired, the vouchers went through to the wrong door, or people hung on to them a bit too long because they didn't want to spend them too early. That's where most of the problems we found were. And the other issues with it was landlords weren't passing them over. The bills were in the landlord's name. The more vulnerable person, the worse the more insecure the accommodation, the fewer rights they had. And landlords got the money rather than tenants in some cases, or there were complicated issues about houses and multiple occupation, who will get it, whose meter went where, as Nikki mentioned again, about all issues around simple as wiring things badly, meters not being labelled for the right flats and things like that caused huge issues. And those people never got the support. I'll end up with just saying that one of the main solutions that we really do push is bankruptcies or debt relief orders, because I see that as a really good solution. It's a way of, if you can't keep up with your debt, to write off your debts and start afresh. And we really do push forward debt relief orders, which is a simplified version of bankruptcies, and a lot cheaper and a lot more suited to our client group. And what I would say is we've seen a massive increase in the last couple of months for demand for that. That's gone up at least last year we were getting around about 2 requests for DROs per month. Now we're getting 3 to 4, so it's almost doubled. And the same thing with bankruptcies. It's a lot more expensive. We're only getting 1 per quarter, and now we're getting around about 3 per quarter. So that's stepped up as well. So that is a bit worrying, because people are getting to the stage where they're just losing all hope. And there's one other point I'll make, which is again echoing what colleagues have said. People are coming forward with a lot more debts when you look into it. Pre-COVID, we were looking at around about 2.19 debts per client. That went up to 3.63 last year. And this year we've noticed it's up around about 4.8 on average per client. So they're coming with on average 4 debts. So it's a lot more complex. And really what we should be doing is sitting down and taking a lot longer approach to try and help people work through their issues. And yeah, it would be great to go back to debt counselling as opposed to just sticking plaster approach, which clients through necessity are taking at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Panel members, have you got any questions? Councillor Brett.
Yeah, hi, sorry. I've got a question for the, I think Nikki Crown was talking from Crosslight. And then you were mentioning around kind of the issues around temporary accommodation. So I was just interested to know what your recommendations would be going forward. Sorry, because I know we were waiting till the end, so thanks.
So I think the problem we see is people don't understand their tenancy agreements, and often the tenancy agreements we see are inaccurate, and they can't. The clients often can't even read the tenancy agreements, and they are being housed by the council. And I do wonder if the communications could be better, and really somebody is sat down and explained, this is what you have got to do. And I know it's a bit of spoon feeding, but these are the most vulnerable people, and we find months, years later, these people come to us and they didn't realise they had council tax bills. So they've got 2 or 3 council tax bills. They could have had council tax support. They would have been entitled. They would have had an underlying entitlement. So we have to then do a discretionary housing payment application. And I think there's a comms thing there. And I have no doubt these are people who will find it difficult to grasp their liabilities and responsibilities. But that's my observation. Others may want to add something to that, but we've certainly been seeing people like that more recently.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Kumar and Councillor Hirsch.
So firstly, thank you for all the 3 presentations. I think I alone picked up a lot of information that I normally would not have known. When you say we are the 4th highest as in taking bailiff action, and what would your recommendation be? I mean, how do you feel, how do you think if Ealing were to stop the bailiff actions on these people, what sort of I think I'd like a little bit more
I mentioned that it was 4th highest, and I think a couple of them mentioned so it's not a very good way of collecting debts, and I would echo that. Hammersmith and Fulham stopped using bailiffs around about 5 years ago. They called it agreed approach to collecting debts, and what that means really is engaging with clients a bit more. So rather than automatically come to October, send in a liability order, and that being rubber stamped by magistrates and automatically incurring a £125 court fee. So start, rather than it just be it's on a timetable. October they're issued, in April they're sent to the bailiff. So it's just automated. That's the problem with it. It's not engaging with people as people. It's not looking at people as issues and try and get to the bottom of it, and try and helping them to get to actually come to agreements they can adhere to. And what it really does is just pushes people away and pushes money into the pockets of bailiffs, and it makes it a lot more complicated. Another thing I think the council could do is, and I know this is difficult in this financial climate, accept that certain groups of people are never going to be able to afford to pay council tax, and try and have as much a generous council tax rebate system as possible. People on benefits can't afford it. I know there's certain exempt groups. Try and expand that as much as possible, realizing that certain times in life people need support, and you're not helping them by pushing them further into debt. I think most councils don't use bailiffs, and the figures show that being the 4th highest council in London out of 28 council authorities that actually use bailiffs, it's the 4th highest, and it's not working.
Yeah, I would echo what Baljit said. I used to work in Hammersmith and Fulham in the times when they did stop using bailiffs, and you were able to have a much more open conversation about what was really truly affordable for this person. So instead of putting their head in the sand and not opening the door, because that's the advice we have to give them, just don't open the door, and the debt gets bigger, and then they get next year's bill and the same happens. Actually, people do want to deal with their debts. People are not willfully avoiding things, but they are very scared. They're very scared when we have to advise them about bailiffs, and it doesn't feel a great relationship to have.
And all you do, even when they pay the bailiffs at their higher rates, they're not paying something else, their rent, or something for the food and having to get the food back. Something has to give, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you for your response. Alison Reynolds would just like to say something. Contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm responsible for the council tax team, and I'm also responsible for the financial assessment team who administer benefits, responsible for the council tax support scheme, etc., the discretionary fund that we have for council tax. So I think, over the years, we have reviewed our schemes, the discretionary support that we give, and increased all of those areas. So we follow a process with council tax collection where we do send quite a lot of documentation, reminders, and we encourage people to contact us and make contact. And what I would say is the bailiffs and enforcement is the last resort. And these are people who have failed to make any contact with us. We put information about step change onto our bills and give them options. We've got breathing space. So I think it would be useful to have a conversation, I think, about what more can we do, because ultimately we don't want to get to that point either. So, and I wasn't aware we were the 4th highest user of bailiff services. I'll be having a look at that. I think a lot of other authorities still do use bailiffs, but I think it is worth a conversation about how we can get people to engage a lot earlier in the process. What more can we do? We do proactive calling when we know that people haven't responded to our reminders, our final notices, and we also do send out text messages as well, telling us to get in contact. So I think it's the failure to engage and how can we encourage that. And I think you've probably explained quite a lot of the reasons why people aren't engaging with us.
Can I make a quick suggestion? I'm sorry, I know.
Can I just mention something? It's just related to what Alison just said, and I'll get back to you. In terms of what you said, could we get some data in regards to, because I would like to see, because based on the work that you're doing now, a reduction in the use perhaps of bailiff use. Do you have any data in regards to that?
We'll have plenty of data, so I'll be able to. I mean, it's been a bit difficult because the data is skewed because of the pandemic, and we also did stop the use of enforcement agents for a long time, and I think we have to balance our collection rate as well. So we've got plenty of data that we can share, and also all the activity that we do as well to try and engage with those customers. And we will be, I think, again, a manifesto commitment is all to continuously review our council tax support scheme, and we will be having another look at, every year we look at that and see what we can do to help and make it easier for people to apply as well, because I think that's one of the barriers, is about how easy is it to apply for that support. So we're continuously looking at how could we make that easier.
Thank you. Baljit?
Thank you very much. I first point I would make is those figures came from 2017. They were the last robust figures because of COVID. And I would say that the council tax support scheme has got better every single year over the last 5 to 6 years. It has got a lot better. So I think the council team are doing a great job there. As far as one thing that you could do to improve it is better communication with advisors. Talking about in the last 2 weeks, we've had lots of council tax queries coming forward because all the bills are coming through, and people who want to engage with council tax department find it very difficult to get through. And when we ring and when we email, we find it very difficult to get through. So even a named officer or knowing, because all of our debt advisors are accredited, you know, they're FCA regulated and so on. So it'd be great to get people two people who want to solve the problem, to get them to communicate better and actually talk to each other when the client's there. That'd be really useful.
That's great. Based on what Baljeet said, is there a particular, like, so for example, I'm just thinking about in terms of the community hubs, what Baljeet said, if he has got, for example, a service user with him, for example, is there any way that there could be a special line into the community hub so that they can have those conversations? Because he's right in terms of like better communication with other agencies, trying to support a resident if they can't get through. And I know I've heard that say, you know, about finding it difficult to get through to some services. Is there any way to possibly do that, or a special email, you know, designated email?
So currently, if somebody goes into the community hub and they need specialist support with council tax, we offer a callback service. So we do a referral to the council tax contact centre, and they will call that person back within, I think it's 24 hours. So they will get a call back, and then that person will help them. So if you go into the community hubs, if that person can't help, then we will get someone to call them back. And we will also do that for local welfare and support. We do have dedicated people, as far as I'm aware, still in financial assessments and benefits, who we've given to voluntary sector, who they can make contact with, and that's normally the team managers. So we can have a look at a process where we can arrange those callbacks. So I think that is something that we can have a look at. What we've done recently is we've prioritised the cost of living helpline and the energy support and the energy rebates, because we had a lot of additional calls. I think sort of some days we were getting up to sort of 300 calls a day in addition on the energy rebates, which makes it harder for us to answer the normal council tax calls. So we have to balance. But I think moving forward next year, without all of these reliefs and the new schemes, I think we'll be a lot better able to answer calls quicker. But we do have the option for customers to ask for a call back. So if we've got a long wait time, they get offered the chance for callback, and again, they'll be called back by the end of the day. So that is there if lines are busy. So I hope that helps, but I see you've got another question. Baljeet.
Yeah, just coming back on that, that is really useful to know. And we do try and build links. I think the problem really is if an advisor, like today, when I was talking to the debt team today, when they try and ring, a callback's no good to them because the client won't be there anymore. And the problem with client callbacks is when you're dealing with vulnerable people, and as we've mentioned, some have got literacy issues, and the letters themselves are quite complicated to understand. I find it difficult to get my head around it sometimes, well, most times. So with an advisor there who knows what they're talking about, with a client here who's been through, they've had a conversation and they've analysed the issue, to actually talk to someone from the council tax department in real time, that's the real communication we want to get going. Or even if it's by email, so there's a conversation there, and you unpick the issue, because most of these issues aren't straightforward. There's normally a mistake that needs to be unpicked, isn't there? And so callbacks to clients don't really work in this situation.
Thank you, Baljeet. I get your point. I mean, Alison, do you want to Yeah.
So I'm happy to take that back to my team. I'm responsible for the contact centre as well. So we all, I think, especially with Louisa leading the cost of living response, they're all working really well together. So I think any feedback such as this, we can sort of get together as a team and respond to that request. So I will take that back to the team. Thank you.
Any more questions from the panel? No, thank you. Thank you, Baljet, and the other Crosslight and London Community Bank. Thank you. Right, so we're going to go on to recommendations actually in terms of what we've heard today. Has anyone got any recommendations that they would like to be considered? No.
I was just going to say some of the ones that you've already mentioned. I think, I mean, me as a panelist agree with those. Yeah,
I've written a list as I do. I think what we could do is possibly consider. I hear what you say in regards to Alison, in regards to, but perhaps have a recommendation in regards to a professional callback or a email service for professionals. So, especially if they're with vulnerable users. Would like to do a recommendation in regards to the information that was the link in terms of the directory. So all the panel members and possibly other councillors can get a copy of that directory because it might be helpful. I'd also like to consider what was mentioned in regards to Hillingdon and Brent in terms of the loan information. I think perhaps we should consider that as a council. Also, the bailiff information, just to consider, like if you could provide the data to the panel, but again, based on what we're doing as a council and our priorities in terms of tackling inequality, you know, I would hope there would be a target to reduce the number of number of use of bailiffs over time. So just to perhaps consider that bailiff use. So in terms of the community hub, again, to consider the environment of the community hubs, which was mentioned earlier on as well. Have I missed anything? I think I've got everything. Yeah.
There was one which kind of resonated with me, and I can't remember now exactly who was talking about that. HMOs, which are now popping up more and more, where, I mean, I had a case where people were living in single rooms, shared bathroom, no kitchen, and they had to pay like council tax like they would live in an apartment. Yeah? Even if it was the lowest level, it was still kind of, you think they're living in a single room. So have we ever looked at, especially because HMOs are more and more increasing, that
I think that's sort of beyond the threshold of the cost of living panel, our panel today. I think that might be something you could perhaps.
Sorry,
yeah. Okay, we can do a recommendation in regards to the council tax and HMOs. Yeah.
Can I just say sorry? I know I'm speaking out of turn. It's Baljet again. My apologies for talking out of turn. That's a valuation issue rather than council tax issue. It's the valuation of who decided that single dwellings just have to consist of a bedroom, don't need a kitchen. So I don't think the council can do much about that, unfortunately.
That's what I thought, but I mean, yeah, something we'll work up, after offline. Thank you, Baljet. Else, any recommendation? Councillor Jessel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to mention that it'd be good to do a risk assessment regarding the community hubs. I don't know if we've got one in place already, but
they probably will do. But in terms of the environment, we'll sort of link that into. So that's why I was sort of mentioning like the environment risk, and they would have done a risk assessment as well. Councillor Brett.
Sorry, I don't want to prolong this any longer. But just around, I thought the London Community Bank speaker, Steve Allen, had some quite interesting ideas around how they've worked with other councils. And I think, I don't know if this is a recommendation or something, but to maybe to have a look at engaging with the London Community Bank a bit further to see how we as a council could work with them.
Okay, we could also put a recommendation in terms of the external agencies that we heard and see if we can better make stronger links with them. Anything else?
I think just a point on what we visited the food banks, and I think Crosslight, we actually had a conversation with them as well. I think better communication with the council, because these are organizations that are actually helping our residents, and they're putting in an awful lot of work, especially for the vulnerable. And I think that if we as a council were to give them, you know, a better route of, or a swifter, more efficient route of communication, because that's what's come back from what I have discovered as well, is that communication is not that prompt. To us it is, but I think better communication, easier communication, so that they're able to resolve their casework and help these people.
Thank you. I think we'll go on to item 8 now, which is the draft final report, which was circulated to everyone. And I'll just like to refer people to section 13 of the recommendations, the current recommendations. And is there any amendments that anyone would like to make on that? No, that document, brilliant. So following on from that report would actually go to the Overview and Scrutiny officer. And if there's any issues, the final report will come back to us in consultation. I'm looking at
so you're asking the panel to agree that
that
the vice chair can sign off the final recommendation.
Okay.
The report will then go to OSC.
So do we agree the sign off of this so that it can go to OSC, basically? We agree? Great, brilliant, thank you. So that's we're just about to wrap up now. Councillor Kumar.
Yes, I'd like to thank you, the chair of this panel, for all the work throughout the year, and in particular all our officers as well, who've just been amazing. They have actually helped give us a lot of information that one normally would not have, and addressed all our concerns, and of course the input from the panel. So thank you. And to our panel officer, Anna Marie.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo that. Just quickly, just to sum up again, I had a couple of notes as well. So thank you, Anna Marie, for all the support this year and the rest of the panel. But I just also, again, echoing what everything that I said, I am quite optimistic about the future ahead for the most vulnerable in our residents in our borough. So I just want to say thank you for the support. And I think the running theme, I guess, today is that sometimes still, despite the support that people get, they do feel that they can't reach out. And I just want people, if they're listening now, or they ever get sight of this, that please reach out. There's people at the end of a phone, at the end of a laptop, computer, wanting to support and help you. So just, you're not alone. We're in this together. So I just, on that note, thank you. Take care and goodbye.